With the NBA trade deadline just around the corner on February 9th, it's that time of year where you hear all sorts of rumors, roster shakeups, and honestly, as a fan, this is my favorite time of the year, aside from the playoffs, of course. And as an NBA fan, to see what roster adjustments are being made, how it changes the landscape of the league, and it really gives you a good indication of teams where it might have been in an uncertain situation, what direction they were going on by the trade deadline. You're going to have a good understanding of those who are choosing to go all in and looking to win now, and those that are blowing it up and looking to rebuild for the future. But this season has been interesting because there's been so much parity in the league that the level of talent and competition is at an all-time high, to the point where the trade market has been really quiet thus far. Front offices are holding out to see what moves are made first before they pull the trigger, and for the longest time you were hearing all these trade rumors and speculation on what some teams might do, how there were some talks happening regarding certain players, but then nothing was happening. Trades weren't being made. But then finally, the first domino fell when it was reported that the LA Lakers made a trade for Rui Hachimura, sending the Washington Wizards 3 second-round picks and Kendrick Nunn in exchange for Hachimura. And while this trade might seem like a pretty minor transaction in that there weren't any big names or star players being moved in a trade, it is actually more significant than you think in being that first trade that could lead to a downfall of trades in the coming days. And that's what we'll be talking about in this video. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, consider subscribing, as this is still a new channel and only about 11% of you watching are actually subscribed to the channel. So do me a favor and help the community grow, and in return I'll be providing more NBA content like this all season long, as well as all the trade deadline coverage you need as trades start picking up as we near the deadline in a couple of weeks. But anyway, let's first talk about this trade and then what it means as it trickles down to the rest of the league in subsequent trades. First off, I actually really like this trade for the Lakers. Like, making fun of the Lakers and what a disaster they have been with some of the decisions they've made over the course of the last few years has been fun and all, and I'm not saying this move takes them to another level. Like, I still consider them to be a bottom level play-in team at best even after this trade. But here's the thing, Rui Hachimura is a solid player. He's a guy I was hoping the Bulls would be able to snag, as it was clear his days with the Wizards were numbered, but Hachimura can play and still has upside potential given he's only 24 years old. He's one of these players whose career has stalled a bit in terms of his development because of injuries. He missed a good portion of his third season in the league because of injuries, and then the other piece being on a team where he doesn't fit and wasn't prioritizing his development. When you're playing alongside a very ball-dominant player in Bradley Beal, who, if we're going to be honest, doesn't really make his teammates better and has always been about getting that bag, and then Hachimura, 6'8" power forward, alongside guys like Kyle Kuzma, Kristaps Porzingis, Deni Avdija, Corey Kispert, Anthony Gill. I know not all of these are power forwards, but you're talking about a roster that is heavy in terms of their forwards. And with Kuzma having a great season, the fact that he's going to be a free agent, he's 27 and in the peak of his prime, Rui's development as a player was going to be put by the wayside when Kuzma is averaging over 35 minutes per game. And what I like about Hachimura is he's actually very strong in operating in the paint and finishing at the rim, but at the same time, also not a bad jump shooter. He's a solid rebounder as well, and he's a big-time hustle player, plays with a lot of effort, and has that grit that you want to see in a player who is hungry to get better. Don't get me wrong, he has his flaws, not a good defender, really bad rim protector for being a 4, and while I still think he has upside potential, he's not ever going to be an all-star in this league. But he's a solid role player, and a role player that can give you some solid depth in the front court with his ability to score. So I like this pickup for the Lakers, especially considering they only had to give up 3 second-round picks, which I know for some they'll say that's an overpay, especially when the Lakers have such limited draft capital as it is. They hardly have any first-round picks. Now you're moving all of your second-round picks as well. And for Rui Hachimura, but honestly, second-round picks are so few and far between. It's so hard to hit on a second-round pick when you look at the history of the draft. Yes, there have been some gems selected in the second round, like Nikola Jokic, Draymond Green, Malcolm Brogdon, Jalen Brunson, among others. But more often than not, second-round picks rarely make it beyond 4 years in the NBA, and some don't even end up making a roster in the NBA even after they get drafted. Not only that, but the Lakers historically have not drafted very well. So getting a player that is already a little more established, has some upside potential, and a player who, yes, you're going to have to pay, but you're likely going to be able to get them on a team-friendly contract because of the fact that Hachimura hasn't developed or proven much to deserve a big payday. For the Wizards, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say this is a bad move because Hachimura clearly isn't a part of their long-term plans anyway. He's set to be a restricted free agent, and if the intention wasn't to keep him around and prioritize paying Kyle Kuzma instead, then getting some assets in return for Hachimura while also shedding some salary is better than losing him for nothing as a free agent. The thing for me about the Wizards is, what is the direction of this team? They're not good, haven't been good for a while, have always kind of been in that state of mediocrity while they're either missing the playoffs but not bad enough to get a top 5 pick in the draft, or they make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round. They give Bradley Beal the supermax, which, don't get me wrong, Beal is a fine player, but he really hasn't done much to elevate this team over the course of the last few seasons. And even when they do bring in some talent, like Porzingis or even Kuzma, or to an extent Westbrook, even though I know by the time Westbrook came on the team, he was already starting to fall off. And yes, I know Beal has been injured here and there, but even when he is in the lineup, the Wizards have just been okay. So what's the direction of this franchise? Are they just okay being an average team year after year? Now, of course, this move of trading Hachimura, as I mentioned, likely means they're keeping Kuzma around. They're going to pay him a big contract this offseason, which will silence all the trade rumors surrounding Kuzma for now. But say you pay Kuzma somewhere in the range of $20 million, since that's what's been reported what he's looking for. You have Beal on a supermax deal. Porzingis still on a max contract. You got Daniel Gafford that they gave a big extension to, who's going to be making over 8 figures all the way through 2026. And then younger guys like Avdija, Corey Kispert, who you're going to have to pay down the line when their rookie contracts expire. The timelines are all off. The roster they have doesn't elevate them to even being a top team in the Eastern Conference. And at some point you have to think, when do they just blow it up? And that kind of leads me to my point in all of this. I wouldn't say it's impossible where there is a world the Wizards make this move of trading Hachimura, acquiring 3 second-round picks, is the first domino that leads to an overhaul of this roster and a fire sale to completely start over. Now, it's very possible the Wizards are just fine being in a state of mediocrity. They've literally been doing that for the last 10 years. But at some point, you'd have to think they need to start fresh. And what better time than to do it knowing this upcoming draft in 2023 is going to be stacked? Could this lead to the Wizards trading Kyle Kuzma, maybe even Porzingis, dare I say it, even looking to move on from Bradley Beal, even though he has a no-trade clause, which is still insane to me that the Wizards agreed to that. Shout out to Bradley Beal's agent, who was able to secure a supermax contract and negotiate a no-trade clause for a non-superstar player. That's incredible. But even despite the no-trade clause, it doesn't mean that Wizards can't move Bradley Beal. They just have to work with him in finding the destination he wants so he agrees to waive his no-trade clause, which gives them very little leverage when negotiating a trade with whatever team he wants to go to. But hey, at that point, you just have to cut your losses, treat it as a sunk cost, and take the assets you can in return and start over. And if the Wizards were to do this, blow up the roster, move all their veteran players, and rebuild, this would mean a big shakeup for the rest of the NBA. As the first team that goes on this fire sale and says, yeah, this roster isn't going to work. We thought maybe we could make some noise in the playoffs, but we're too far down in the standings. We're blowing it up and we're going to start tanking. This could lead to a fire sale for other teams like the Indiana Pacers, who have talked about for months now and looking to move Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. And although the Pacers started out the season well, have now lost 7 straight and look to be lottery bound. The Hornets, they're already bad, but maybe they look to hit the reset button and trade away their pieces who aren't part of their long-term plans. The Blazers, would they finally look to sell big and go full tank mode to land a top pick? Would that even mean finally moving on from Damian Lillard and getting a big haul for him for a contending team that is looking for a player to put them over the top now? The Raptors, do they go on a crazy trade sale and triggering a rebuild, moving guys like Siakam, Van Fleet, Gary Trent Jr.? This trade, the Wizards moving Hachimura for draft capital, which might seem insignificant to most, might just be the trade that triggers the start of a massive shift in player movement throughout the NBA between those who are looking to tank to get the highest pick possible in a historically stacked draft class and those looking to go all in to compete now for a chance at a title. Or I could just be getting overly excited as we near the trade season in the NBA. You guys let me know in the comments what you think, and as always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.